Okay, so we have about 25 minutes left on this particular memory card after this, and we have to start uploading our videos so I could clean the card or make memory for our next batch of videos. But a preface to the first edition. Once upon a time, while sitting on my sheepskin rug in deep meditation, I had a strange experience. I was quietly and consciously counting my breaths when suddenly I found myself outside of my body. Now, for those of you who have heard of astral projection, that's what this is. You know, the ability to leave our physical being. You know, they say, I've never personally astral projected myself, like with a choice, you know, but I've had moments to even where I've had dreams. You know, when I was younger, I used to have dreams a lot. I would be watching myself sleep from the ceiling, you know, and I've heard that's a form of astral projection, even in your sleep, you know, and like you leave your body, you know, and you're supposed to be connected to it still by a silver cord through your belly button. I found myself outside of my body, looking at another me sitting there with full lotus. No sooner did I realize who I was looking at, in parentheses, though she looked somewhat older, in parentheses. Then I saw a book fall into her lap. As it landed, it jarred me back into my body, and I looked down and read the title, The Chakra System, by A. Judith Moll, my name at that time. That was 1975. I had only recently read the word, quote, chakra, end quote, for the first time, but had obviously registered with some significance. I crawled out of my meditation and went to find the passage, a mere paragraph in the book by Ram Dass, yet I turned almost directly to it. I read the passage several times and felt an immediate swirling of energy in my body, a deep inner churning, like the feeling a detective might have when finding an important clue. It was a feeling of conception, of something new starting to grow. I knew then I was to eventually write this book. It took many years before the word chakra started appearing in the book indexes and card catalogs. Information was scarce, so I was forced, fortunately, to develop my own theories through self-experimentation and the scrutiny of others to whom I taught yoga and administered bodywork. Before long, everything I saw seemed to fall into this neat little pattern of, quote, sevenness, end quote. Colors, events, behaviors, days, yet I could find little actual information to correlate my theories. I gave it up, moved to the country, and began an earnest study of ritual magic, most notably working with the elements, earth, water, fire, and air. Now remember, these are the main elements of which everything is made out of. You know, we ourselves have the elements of earth, fire, water, and air within each and every single one of us. You know, because the earth being, you know, the body of which we live in, the water being the, you know, I guess I can't really connect it because all of this is part of the body. Each and every single one of these shouldn't have its individualization, you know, because I know we need air to breathe, we need water to drink, we need, you know, this earth to live in, and the fire of what we are is the spirit of what we are. You know, like a quote from Thoth the Atlantean, he says, fire, the inner fire, is the most potent of all force, and this fire is the soul of who we are. But let's not delve too deep into that, and let's not try to make any connections anytime soon, especially on things like that. My meditations continued, my theories grew, and so did I. I still didn't have the words I wanted, so instead of writing about chakras, I found myself painting them. The process of visualization helped develop my thinking in a non-linear way. 2 years later, forced to return to civilization, I found that the use of the word chakra had grown. I became part of a consciousness research group and went back to school. I returned to my bodywork practice. I underwent clairvoyant training and discovered others had independently come to see some of the same patterns. I was validated and with my newfound clairvoyant sight, return to this work. Over the past 10 years, I have developed these theories from the hundreds of clients I have seen for bodywork, psychic readings, counseling, and teachings. I have delved into Sanskrit literature quantum. And here's a thing at the bottom. It says Ram Das is the only dance there is. That's what Ram Das means, the only dance there is. So let's go back to the top and put that in perspective. So she says, I crawled out of my meditation and went to find the passage, a mere paragraph in the book by Ram Das. And that book was the only dance there is. That is the book by Ram Das. Okay, let us continue with where we were. Over the past 10 years, I have developed these theories from the hundreds of clients I have seen for bodywork, psychic readings, counseling, and teachings. I have delved into Sanskrit literature, quantum physics, theosophy, magic, physiology, psychology, and personal experience to patch together a coherent system that bridges the old and the new. Both my work and I have undergone many changes. Excuse me, sorry. Okay, today, 11 years later, I finally give up being pregnant. Fully formed or not, this baby has decided to be born. I feel like I'm having septuplets. Lots of pushing, long labor, yet impossible to stop once begun. Septuplets. Let's look that up as well. Septuplets. So septuplet, any group of combination of 7. One of 7 offsprings born at one birth. Septuplets, 7 offsprings born at one time. So septuplets is having 7 babies at once. I don't know if you've ever seen that show, John and Kate plus 8. I believe that's what it was called. It's been a long time. It's a super old show. I'd seen it a few times when I was younger. But yeah, this lady had 8 kids. 8 kids. That's a lot. So she says, I felt like I was having septuplets. Lots of pushing, long labor, yet impossible to stop once begun. Each of these 7 babies, called chakras, deserves to be a book of its own. I've given them English names: survival, sex, power, love, communication, clairvoyance, and wisdom. Survival being our Muladhara chakra, which grounds us to the earth. Sex being our Svadhisthana chakra, which is responsible for our sexual center, our creative center. Power, which is our Manipura chakra, which is our seat of our will power. Love, which is our Anahata chakra, our heart chakra, which is for compassion and love. Communication, which is our Visuddha chakra, throat chakra, which is responsible for creating specific vibrations and making certain, it's like a messaging system that we have. You know, clairvoyance, which is our third eye chakra, and then wisdom, which is our Sahasrara chakra, which would be our crown chakra. Yet they go by many names, and most often by numbers. In this work, however, they are represented as a family and integral unit, working and growing together. The chapters couldn't possibly approach all there is to say about sex, power, or any of them, only what's relevant to follow branches of this particular family tree, with its roots in the earth and its leaves in the heavens. This book is a practical guide to a subject that is normally considered very spiritual, as, quote, spiritual subjects, end quote, are so often considered impractical or inaccessible. This book attempts to re-examine the spiritual realms, showing how deeply they are embedded in each and every aspect of our daily lives. It is my belief that people will understand and value their spiritual natures only when it becomes practical to do so, until they actually have a system to follow. Far more is accomplished when we want to do something than when we think we should. Now that is very... That sentence right there just resonated with me 100% when she actually said that, because it is so true. People need to have a practical system, like, hey, this is, the anatomy of our spirit, and these are these energies, this energy centers that we have in our body. Because remember, yoga is a spiritual science. It is a spiritual exercise that was designed and created back in old ancient times, and this practice was designed to not only stretch out our body, and to bring us into a state of health and wellness, and to align ourselves, but it's a spiritual science. Yoga, it stands for yoke. When you do yoga, you're yoking your consciousness, the movements. It's a mind-body correlation. It's a connection, it's a oneness type thing. Once you start to practice this, you really start to become like really just one with yourself, and you really start understanding your body more. You start knowing when your body's asking for more hydrating foods. You know when your body needs more protein. You just intuitively know when you need these things. A lot of people don't really seem to be connected to their body, so they don't exactly know what they need to provide it. We need to learn how to be more in unity with not only ourselves, or not only our environment, but also within ourselves. Remember, as within, so without, as above, so below. It has to first happen within you. And this practical knowledge to doing so, just like with fitness, people who understand fitness go and do it more often. When they understand counting calories, when they understand, carbs and proteins and fats, how much we should be eating, how much less calories we need to eat, keep your foods more nutrient dense than calorie dense. Provide your body with nutrition instead of calories. If you're trying to get your six-pack in, if you're trying to get more ripped and toned, you need to be on a calorie deficit. Okay, not necessarily saying your nutrition has to be different, but you need to be eating a little bit less. As to where you're trying to gain weight and put on mass, you need to be, of course, eating some more. That's a practical thing in which we follow. And this practice that we do takes us into the direction in which we want to go physically. Likewise with this practice will take us in the direction we want to go spiritually. When times are such that billions of people face the possibility of nuclear disaster, when men and women fear walking the streets at night, when alienation and disorientation are at an all-time high, then spirituality becomes very practical. The search for unifying factors in our daily existence, the search for understanding and direction, and the inevitable pull towards consciousness brings us to a critical evaluation of our spiritual natures. Too pragmatic and scientific to accept things on faith, Western people have lost touch with the world of spirit and the sense of unity it can bring. And how true is that? Because you don't meet a lot of people, especially in this Western part of society. I live here in Fontana. They don't always talk about the spirit of a thing. I don't. I'm the only one of the people I know that does yoga, that practices. I'm really one of the only ones I know of a lot of the people I know that even exercises and is health and wellness. I meal prep my own foods. I discipline myself with whatever it is that I'm eating, because it's just part of who I am. And same thing with this. This has become a part of who I am, and this is something I believe in because it is something that's made a difference in my life, and that's one reason why I'm here sharing this book and information. This full book I haven't read personally. I've never read any books on the chakra systems, but I've studied it and I've practiced yoga, and I've noticed the difference it's made in my life, especially in my mind. And just that itself has connected me with this, yes, yoga, yes, Yes, yoga. Let's go do yoga. Let's feel good. Like you would go to the gym, and you feel great after. You feel great physically and yes, mentally too. But when you do yoga, you feel great in here. Like you feel amazing in here. Yes, you feel nice and stretched out in your body, but you feel so just clean and cleared in here. And one thing's my goal, my purpose of reading this book and me doing all of this, because I know ultimately this is helping me to grow into the person I need to be, in my future, for who I need to be for those around me, because this is information that I want to help people to come to. Yes, let's grow more as spiritual beings, not just physically or mentally, but spiritually as well. Ancient systems coached in language and cultures so different from ours are often too alienating for the Western mind. So thank you, Miss Anodea Judith, for making this and putting this in a way for us Western people to even understand a little bit more, because it is different, just like with Scripture, even how Charles was explaining that with Scripture, it has to be explained differently nowadays than it was back then, because just everything is different now. We live in a totally different era. We live in a different time. People don't talk like that anymore. Like, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. It's a scripture, and those are extreme words of wisdom, but not everyone is going to, especially nowadays, is going to understand exactly what that means. He who thinks in his heart, so is he. He who thinks feelingly with everything that he does. Those things that you feel in your life. When you follow your heart, when you follow what this thing is telling you, when you think more with this thing, and when you think about things, you involve this in there. Because remember, thinking by itself is dead. We have to emotionalize it with feeling in order to bring that thought, to vitalize that thought, to actually take hold and grow into our reality by the law of growth. That seed takes hold within your mind, and it begins to grow as long as you keep watering it. That is how our inner world works. It's totally different than anything external to us. It's like it's different, yet it's still very connected, and it's still the same, because as within, so without. This book attempts to validate the needs facing us today physically, mentally, and spiritually. It contains theories for the intellectual, art for the visionary, meditations for the ethereal, and exercises for the body. Hopefully, it has something for everyone, providing practicality without stifling the more important underlying essence. To satisfy the Western mind and my own, I've included some scientific theories, but my own background is not scientific, and I find that when you come right down to it, few people really think that way in their personal lives. For me, discovery of the chakras first came from an intuitive sense, later to grow and join with the rational. I would like to impart this order to the reader as well. Now that's funny, because that's kind of how I came across the chakras. When my sister-in-law and my brother, when they lived here with my nephew, they were right next door. It's crazy how long they've been gone already. But she really helped me to really start all of this, because she was my support. She believed in me. She helped me. She pushed me. She understood me, and she was a fellow Aquarian, which was funny. And I actually had a dream once, and I'm never gonna forget this dream. And this magic lady, she was in my dream. This magic lady, she had black hair, and I was telling Franny, her name is Franny, I was telling her about this dream. I was like, it was weird, because she was talking about an hourglass. This mage, this sage was telling me about an hourglass and the importance of time. and she was saying the hourglass only asks questions, which is going to help it further its development, and it's so amazing because I remember it perfectly, just as if it was yesterday, and this has already been several months. And I ended up telling her about the dream, and that was her in my dream, and she was like, oh wow, like an hourglass is one of my favorite things, like she was always telling me about hourglasses, and it was just a trip, it was one of those things where it's just like, wow, like, is this really happening, like, did this really, mean something, like, what could I take from this, and from that I remembered it, still to this day clearly. And what I took from that is, yes, asking questions that is going to help you further your stage of growth. Once you ask those questions, remember, by the law of attraction, once you move into that state of curiosity, you're vibing at that state of mind, those vibrations, and you're releasing that, and you attract those things that will hone your curiosity. You will attract those things that will feed that curiousness that you have, or whatever questions that you have for your next stage of development. Like they say, ask and you shall receive. And remember what we've learned about prayer. The form of prayer is entering into that vibration, that state of vibration, and forming your unity with that thing. Have faith. Believe that it is coming to you, because doubts, fear, any of that, if you're releasing that, that's gonna keep you that thing away from coming into your life. So perfect faith, stay in that vibration and continuously pull those things towards you. And one thing is for sure that I want to add to you, depending on how big the thing is that you're asking for, is going to determine the amount of time it takes to manifest in your life. Okay, because there's a scripture talks about you cannot manifest an ox plowing wheatgrass, something like that. Like an ox is something that takes a lot of time to manifest, as to, wheatgrass. You know what I'm saying? So there's this difference between them. And there's also one thing I want to talk about. I had read in a book, The Original Teachings of Jesus Christ. It's been a while since I've read it. I used to read it all the time when I was younger. I would read that in connection with taught the Atlanteans Emerald Tablets. But they would talk about Manvantaras. Okay, and Manvantaras are supposed to be periods of manifestations. Like we were just talking right now. It takes longer to manifest something big in your life than it would to manifest something small. Because those smaller things, they could come to you that same day. They could come to you the next day. They could come to you in a week from now. But those really big things that take time to manifest, you have to keep putting your energies into it. Remember, it takes a long time to manifest an ox, and you can't manifest an ox only plucking at wheatgrass. So let us continue. Okay. For me, the discovery of the chakras first came from my intuitive sense, later to grow and join with the rational. I would like to impart this order to the reader as well. Literature tends to be linear and rational, while the states induced by the chakras require a different mode of consciousness. As a result, the information is presented in a variety of ways. To satisfy the rational mind, I have presented these theories with concrete scientific metaphors, popular paradigms from the fields of consciousness, research, and modern therapy techniques. This is the intellectual part. Its purpose is to transmit information and stimulate the thinking process. And remember, we are greater than the intellectual part of our mind. It is the mind that reasons things. To call to the other side of the brain, I have included guided meditations, exercises, artwork, and personal anecdotes in hopes of making the chakras come more alive. This is the fun part. Its purpose is to bring the experience of being intuitively connected to the information at hand.